Hey, Pastor Josh here. We are reading Acts chapter 5, verses 33 through 39. Peter and the apostles have just made a commitment that they are going to obey God and not man. Doesn't matter what they're telling them, they're going to keep doing the right thing. What we need to see and what we see in this text is that God is working behind the scenes. God is always working behind the scenes, working in ways that we can't even understand and we don't even know. Sometimes we find out, and sometimes we'll find out later in heaven. God is always working behind the scenes. I think of dramas and I think about plays in particular. When plays are happening, there is so much stuff that is happening backstage, behind the curtain, behind the stage. There's costume changes. There are set changes that happen. And sometimes, if you've ever been backstage before, it can be kind of wild and chaotic. People are switching and running and getting ready real fast, and people are nervous because they're getting ready to go on stage. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but everybody's sitting in their nice seats. They don't see that because there's a curtain there. You can't see behind the curtain, but indeed, there's a lot of activity going on backstage, behind the scenes. And God, you can be guaranteed that God is working behind the scenes of your life. He is maneuvering and doing things, sending his angels to do different things to ultimately bless you and take care of you. And we're going to see him doing that in our text today. So they have just boldly said, we are not going to listen to you. We're going to listen to God. And we know by implication, they're essentially saying you can kill us then. Just kill us, even as Jesus did. And so here is what the religious leaders, when they heard that these guys are going to continue telling people about Jesus, here is what they do. When they heard this, they were enraged and wanted to kill them. So this was enough to make them so angry that they wanted to kill them. But a Pharisee in the council named Gamaliel, a teacher of the law, held in honor by all the people, stood up and gave orders to put the men outside for a little while. So this man is going to be used by God to work behind the scenes. Now, Gamaliel was actually one of the teachers of the Apostle Paul. Before he became the Apostle Paul, his name was Saul, and he was a Pharisee, a very strict Pharisee. And we're told, Paul tells us, that he actually studied at the feet of Gamaliel. This Gamaliel is his teacher, was his professor, was the one that was teaching him the Bible. And I have reasons to believe that the reason we even have this account is because Saul himself was in that room. If you notice, the scriptures told us what? That Gamaliel had all of the people move, or had them all sent out of the room. And yet we have a record of what happened inside. And I believe it's because Saul, who would later become the Apostle Paul, was there. In fact, we're told that when Stephen is martyred and when he is killed, that Saul, the future Apostle Paul, actually held the coats of those that would stone and kill Stephen. But here we get a behind-the-scenes look at what Gamaliel is doing. And as we even get this behind-the-scenes look, we understand how God is working behind the scenes. So this Gamaliel is held in honor by all the people. And here's what he says. He said to them, "Men of Israel, take care. You better be careful. You better watch out. You better watch what you're getting ready to do. Men of Israel, take care what you are about to do with these men." Because he is probably sensing there's something going on here. For before these days, Theudas, he's going to give an example here. Theudas rose up claiming to be somebody. Like a Messiah figure, a Jesus figure. And a number of men, about 400, joined him. He was killed, and all who followed him were dispersed and came to nothing. He's saying this is not the first time we've had anybody pushing against us. This is not the first time we've had somebody claiming to be the king of Israel and to fix everything. This is not the first time this has happened. And in fact, we've had a situation where this has happened, and the person died, and all of his followers came to nothing. So here is now his advice. And he gives another example. He says, after him, Judas the Galilean rose up in the days of the census and drew away some of the people after him. But what happened to him? He too perished, and all who followed him were scattered. And here is where God is working behind the scenes, because he is using Gamaliel to protect the apostles and to protect the church. So here's his advice. So in this present case, I tell you, keep away from these men. Just leave them alone. And let them alone. For if this plan or this undertaking is of man, it will fail, just like the other ones did. If this is nothing, it's going to come to nothing, and you don't have to spend all this energy fighting against them. But if you choose to engage with these men, if you choose to combat them, if it is of God, you will not be able to overthrow them. So he's saying just let them alone. If you let them alone and it's not of God, then it's going to come to nothing. But if it ends up being God is doing something and you are fighting against them, you actually will find yourself fighting against God. So he's telling them, leave them alone. And in this way, God is working behind the scenes to free the apostles. Now, the apostles are actually going to get a beating. They're going to get whipped for speaking. But they do not lose their life. God is working behind the scenes to protect his apostles. And he says you might even be found to be opposing God. So they actually took his advice. And so this is how God worked behind the scenes to protect the early church and to protect the apostles. And I wonder for ourselves, I wonder for you, that if it is true that God is working behind the scenes, then why don't you just trust him? If he really is working behind the scenes to protect you and to work out his plan, then why don't you trust him? Trust him and commit to do the right thing. You might be tempted to do the wrong thing right now, that you need to take things into your own hands to fix things and make things go right. It's not what you need to do. You need to do the right thing and the correct thing, and then trust that God is going to work behind the scenes and make everything work together for good. And if it doesn't work together for good on this side, you can absolutely guarantee that God will cause it to work together for good for perhaps somebody else. But ultimately, you'll see what your obedience to the Lord and your commitment to do what is right, you'll see what that comes to in the very end. I pray that has been a blessing to you, and I will see you all in the next video.